Welcome back to my tutorial series, and this is going to be number 3. The first 2 that I did were quite wide-ranging really. They looked at like an overview of loading the game and kind of how you start playing the game, and number 2 was about staffing, but again quite general. Today we're going to look at scouting, and we're going to go a little bit more in depth into it. Again, these videos, they could be like 2 hours long if you go into them in massive depth. And like I've said many times before, if you want to go more in depth into my video today, there are people out there. FM Scout do some amazing videos on all aspects of the game, and some of their presenters will go into quite a lot of depth. They'll maybe give you six pointers on scouting that nobody ever covers, and they'll click buttons and go into little areas that I mean, even I learned things from that. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to give you, I've been playing the game now for about 3 years or thereabouts, and I kind of know my way around the game, and hopefully what I'm giving you is I think sometimes some of the tutorials can be from people who've been playing the game for 10 years, and A, they take a lot of things for granted, B, they get very complex and complicated. I like to think my tutorials are a little bit more grounded and a little bit more for not necessarily the beginners, but maybe people who have been, maybe they had FM22, FM21, but FM23 comes out, it's a little bit new. So I like to think mine are a little bit more, shall we say, simplistic. It's probably not the right word, but I'm sure, hopefully you will learn things from today's tutorial. Anyway, let's get stuck into it. So basically, I've been using the Curzon Ashton save. Now, depending on what club you take over, if you take over a lower league team like Curzon Ashton, for instance, now I've spoken about this before, you'll probably get allocated 2 scouts if you're lucky. So you have to bear that in mind in what I'm going to do today. Today I'm going to use a Newcastle save that I've had running, because with that one, I have a lot more scouts. Being in the Premier League, I think I've got about 15 scouts, and it just allows me to give you more of a representation of what you can do. But you do have to bear in mind the club that you start with, because a lot of what I'm going to say today will apply, but you won't have the depth to be able to go. If you've only got 2 scouts and you're with Curzon Ashton, you'll only be able to scout the leagues in and around you, maybe even only the league that you're in and in England. You'll not be able to go to Spain, you'll not be able to go to Brazil, and you get my drift. So we're going to use the Newcastle save today. So like I said in the other tutorial videos that I've done, there are many ways of playing this game. You can kind of play a really hands-off game where you basically just do the very basics in the game of managing a team. My view on that is that, it's not a definitive view by any means, but if you're buying a game, you want it to be as immersive as you possibly can. So I generally try to take control of every aspect of the game. That includes scouting and coaching, and I kind of do everything, and it makes it much more fun and immersive game. So what I'm going to show you now is the staff screen. So if you come over to staff screen, I've shown you this before, and go to responsibilities and go to scouting, and we click on scouting, and you can see at the moment there you've got, is that 6 different options there: signing scouts, providing scout feedback, handling scout. You can read all of those. So at the moment, the chief scout is obviously you hire a chief scout, and you're kind of assigning things to do, and one of those things is assigning all of the scouts. And if that's the way you want to go, and you don't want to be bothering with assigning scouts, and it is time consuming, but in my view it's quite nice when you send a scout out to Brazil, and let's say within a matter of 3 or 4 weeks he's bringing you back the new wonderkids. Now you've instigated that, somebody else has not done that, you've done that. I find that quite satisfying. You might think, oh, this is a lot of faffing, can't be bothered. but I find it quite satisfying. So I'm going to show you how I do it. So in here, assigning scouts, we've got Steve Nixon, Chief Scout. He's assigning all the scouts. Okay, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to take control of that myself. And any of these other things in here, you can take control or delegate them. And this applies to, if we go back to responsibilities, this goes to the staff, the media, the training, tactics. You can take control or allocate those things. I like to take part. I must qualify this now. I never deal with the media. I find the media part of Football Manager really boring. Every time you play a game, every time you start a game, you've got to speak to the media. They ask you 24. It's boring. So I do assign the media side of it to my assistant manager. I never get involved with the media. Well, if I can help it. Anyway, back to scouting. So I've assigned myself now to assign the scouts. What you must do when you finish that is come down here and click confirm. Unfortunately, you can't see that because my big head is covering it. But there is a button on the right hand side bottom, says confirm. So if you click confirm, that now means that you are now, if you don't click confirm and you come out of that, it'll still be the Chief Scout. Okay, so we've assigned ourselves in the position of assigning scouts. So if we come down to this scouting button on this left hand side, click scouting, and then we go up to scouting coverage and scouting assignments. And if we click on that, these are the scouts. Now this is the start of a brand new save with Newcastle. So I've taken over what was given me at the beginning. Now, like I've said before, with all of your staff, continually ask the board when you're allowed. Ask the board for more staff. The more staff you've got in the background doing the coaching, doing the scouting, medical department, the more you've got, the better your team will be. So continually keep asking. Now you can see at the moment we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We've got 10. I'm starting this. I had a save point right at the beginning of the game, and I come into the Newcastle management position. I've got 10 scouts. I think as the game progressed, I ended up with 15 or 16. I just kept asking for more because you want to cover as much of the world as you can. And managing Newcastle, you can do that because you're in the Premier League. So most Premier League teams will have the scouting budget. So if we come up here at the moment, scouting range, we're allowed to scout the world. Now, when you start a new save, let's go back to Curzon Ashton. You will only be able to, you'll only have a small scouting budget, and you'll only be able to scout probably only your league. So it's very confined. When you move up the tiers and you get into the Premier League, you get a much bigger scouting budget, and then there are tiers. So you'll be able to scout lower league, just your own league. You go a little bit higher, you'll be able to scout maybe your league and the league above and below. A little bit higher, but you'll be able to scout up to your league and up to the championship. And like I say, the higher it goes and you get to Newcastle, you can scout the world, which is great because at Newcastle, you know, we want to try and win the Premier League, we want to try and win the Champions League. We're not going to do that without the best players and, you know, the wonder kids around the world. You can only do that by having really good scouts out around the world. I mean, generally, a lot of the wonder kids do come from Brazil. Not all the time, but, you know, you need scouts on there who can scout Brazil. So that's one of the first things that you need to look at. Where can we scout? So if we click on the scouting button and we come down here to scouting coverage and we click on that button there, at the moment you can see that our scouting coverage, our knowledge of the world is very limited indeed. Down here we've got the staff members. So Paul Baker, for instance, he has a complete knowledge of England and he has a decent knowledge of Scotland. Mick Tate, again, complete knowledge of England. So if we go down this list and we get down to Bruno Rees, so if we just click on Bruno Rees and see what he's able to do. Right, so he has a complete knowledge of England and Portugal, but he has an outstanding knowledge of Brazil. but nobody sent him there. Like I say, this is a brand new save. I've just come into the club. Nobody's thought, oh, Bruno Reis is actually Portuguese. So you can tell the nationality of a scout by going to overview, do information, and in here it will tell you his nationality is Portuguese and his language is spoken, which is quite important as well, because if you're going to send him to Brazil, then he needs to speak the language, and he's fluent in Portuguese, fluent in English, and he's good at Spanish, so we could send him to Spain. But then if we come back into his knowledge, Spain isn't listed, so we wouldn't really send him to Spain. If we were in, let's say we were in a Sky Bet League One, a club, where we had maybe 4 or 5 scouts, and we were a little bit, we wanted to scout Brazil, we had the budget to do it, we might send him to Spain, because he's the only one really that he can, maybe out of the 5 scouts we've got, is the only one that can speak Spanish, not to a great level, it's good, but we would send him to Spain. He's got an adaptability of 15, so that means that he can go to other places than where he's based and reasonably quickly pick up the language, the lie of the land. He can, scout players and speak to people. So his adaptability at 15 out of 20 is really good. But a club like Newcastle, where we've got 15 scouts, 15, 16 scouts we will have when we've recruited them, we can say to Bruno Reis, right, you're our Brazil correspondent, you're going to Brazil, you're going to stay there, and you're going to find all the wonder kids for us. So, of course, the other thing we need to look at as well is his capability. So, again, like I say, all his scores are out of 20. So, judging player ability is 14, judging player potential 11. Now, that's not great out of 20. If we go back over here to contracts and have a look at his contract details, then we can see his contract expires in 2025. He's on £800 a week. If we at Newcastle, if we were saying, right, we want a Brazilian correspondent who is a 19 for ability and 90 for potential, we might think about firing off Bruno Reis and see if we can find one who is better than he is. It's going to cost us money because we have to pay his contract up. You have to bear all these things in mind. And also you have to bear in mind, can we find a Brazilian scout who's a 19 and 19? Maybe not. Let's just assume that we're happy with Bruno Reis and he's got an outstanding knowledge of Brazil. So you have to bear all these things in mind, don't you? He's got an outstanding knowledge of Brazil. His knowledge is not amazing, but it's outstanding, and he's got an adaptability of 15. So he speaks Portuguese. All of these things have all got to be borne in mind. So let's say, okay, we're going to send Bruno Reis to Brazil, and so how do we do that then? So if we come over to the scouting button again, click scouting, go to scouting coverage, and click scouting assignments. And then if we just come down onto Bruno Reis's bar here and just click in the blank space between his name and next opposition, this box will pop up. And it now tells you, it's showing there 10 reports. You can click on the 10 reports. These are players that he's actually scouted himself and he has knowledge of. So he's telling you here, there's how many players is there? There's about a dozen players there. And if we wanted to sort them by recommended ability, this REC, if you click that, it will actually sort them by their recommended ability. So A minus, A minus, A minus, down to C plus. And the top one is Harrison Reed at Fulham. He's going to cost us between 22 and 33 million. He's supposedly coming in as a 3-star with the potential to be 5, and he's going to want 40 grand a week. They're all kind of ballpark figures. You'll find when you go in for that player, Fulham will probably want about 50 million for him, but it kind of gives you a little bit of an indication. So we're back onto this screen again. So we want to say to Bruno Reis, right, Bruno, we want you to go out and find some players for us, or a player for a position, a specific position, maybe a goalkeeper or something like that. So we're going to create a focus. So we click that, and when we get this box comes up. Now you can see over this side here, Any position from tactic, or we can deselect that and then we can actually select a specific role that we want. So midfield centre, and also the player is suited to play in any role, but we can click this drop down box. We can do ball winning midfield player, we can deep line playmaker, Mazzala. So we can select a position, and we can also select a specific role for that position, and we can also set a minimum proficiency to play the role. So by default it's set on good. So there's 3 levels: decent, good, very good. So we can be quite specific in what we want. If you, let's say you wanted him to just go and scout Brazil and come up with players for any position, we would select that box again, any position for the tactic. You can give it a name. So up here, you can type a name in there so you can identify what he's actually doing. You might want to name it under 18s, or, you know, wonder kids, or whatever you want. Again, under here, transfer, loan, or transfer and loan. So you can be quite specific about that. Minimum current ability, so that's 2 to 5 stars. So let's say, for instance, you wanted him to go and scout players who are under 18. It's unlikely you would get an under 18 to come in at a 5 star. So you'd probably set this to a 2, but the potential you would set to, let's say, 5. So he's going to go and look for, in Brazil, under 18 players, any position, with a starting ability of 2 star with a potential to be 5. Like I say, if you go back to the left hand side of the screen, you can actually, let's say you wanted to sign a central defender who was specifically a no-nonsense centre-back and was very good in that position, and then you could come back over this side, 2 star with the potential to be... All of these things can all be changed around. One of the slight problems with being very, very specific is that you might miss a wonder kid. So if you're looking specifically for a defender or a midfielder, you might miss the next best thing in strikers. So again, you know, all these things can be played with. So we come down a little bit further, age between 15 and 50. Obviously, we don't want 50-year-old players. So depending what you're looking for, you might be in need of, let's say, for instance, a creative midfield player. You haven't got any, or you've only got one and you want a really good backup. So you maybe would come in here and say, right, we want between 19 and 26. We want him coming in as, let's say, a 3.5 star with the potential to be 5. So you can see we've already adjusted that now. We're looking for a different kind of player now. We're wanting somebody who's going to come in, hit the ground running, and, you know, he can go straight into the first team. Areas. So if we click the drop down, choose an area. Again, drop down. So you can scout competitions, you can scout nations, you can scout region, continent. We're going to do Brazil, so we're going to go to nation. We're going to go to South America, and we're going to go to Brazil. And now he's doing Brazil. You can do more than one if you want. Probably not advisable with the one scout. Click confirm. And then we now have another box here which says top, standard, or ongoing. So generally, if you click top, it says 6 scouts will be assigned to top priority focus for quicker results. So depending on how many scouts, 6 scouts is a lot. So depending on how many scouts you've got, I generally don't do top priority. I mean, let's say, for instance, you have just signed the best midfield player in the world and you're thinking, right, this lad's going to take us far. And within the first 2 games, he breaks his leg and he's out for 6 months. You might then want to say, right, we can't be doing without him. We need somebody else to come in. So you might want to do a top priority. Bring all your scouts in. Top priority. We need a player who can play in that position, who can cover for him. Standard is just basically they'll go out. They'll have a good look. It'll be for a time period, and then they'll come back. If you click ongoing, then they'll just keep doing it basically. So assign scouts. If we click the drop down box, At the moment, it's assign any scouts. So if we deselect that and then scroll down, we can actually say Bruno Reis, confirm. And you can also, if you've got the budget for analysts, recruitment analysts and that kind of thing, you can actually assign an analyst as well who will analyse the data on that player to give you even more information. And then the last box down here is include results found in other recruitment focuses. So let's say you have 2 scouts, maybe even 3 scouts doing Brazil. You might have 1 scout doing Brazil. You might have another one doing the continent. So doing an overall, he might be good enough to do Argentina, Brazil. He might be able to do the continent. But they might be coming back with the same player. So this is include results found in other recruitment focuses. If you deselect that, he's not going to recommend a player that somebody else has already recommended. Again, entirely up to you. And then the other thing that we would do finally is if we go to further details here, and then we click this drop down box. So again, you can see here, there's an awful lot of choices now. So let's say, for instance, you had a club who were playing in European competitions. The homegrown status becomes really important because you have an allocation that you have to meet. So you can click homegrown status and you can ask them to go out and do all of that other stuff, but also make sure he's homegrown. Nationality, transfer value, world reputation, contract status is an interesting one. So if we click that, the default is expired. Now, this is quite an interesting one. If you're in the lower leagues, let's say, for instance, you don't have much of a transfer budget. In the lower leagues, you can actually bring a lot of players in on free transfers where the contracts have expired or they're about to expire. And you can sign some really, really good players in the lower leagues that don't cost you any transfer fee. And all you're paying for is their wages. So if you come into this one, you can actually ask them for all of that other stuff, but you want the contract to be expired because you've no transfer budget. But if we click that box, again, you've got another drop-down box here. So you might want to ask for a player whose contract is expiring in 3 months. And depending on ages and various regions around the world, you can actually still sign that player for nothing, because he's got to a point in his career, he might have a release clause or something in his contract. And like I say, just have a look down here, and this is very, very handy. Yeah, so if you're a top club and you're playing in Europe and you want to try and sign a player who is homegrown in the nation or even homegrown at club, you can go in here, homegrown status. So the scout will only look for those kind of players. If you're you're managing a very lowly club, then you can go in here and look for, or ask your scouts to look for contracts that have expired, which are not going to cost you any. So there's lots of things that you can do in here, and you can be quite specific, or you can be quite general. It's entirely up to you. So when we've done all of that, then we would just click confirm. And once you click confirm, don't forget to click confirm, because all of that work that you've just done, if you don't click confirm, then the scout won't do it, basically. So you'll have wasted your time. Anyway, I don't want this video to be super long today. I am a little bit aware that I do waffle an awful lot. But I think I've given you a little bit of an insight there on how to set a scout up. Obviously, if you've got 15, 16 scouts, it can take some time to send people to Spain, Portugal, Brazil, Argentina. Obviously, scout your own country. I mean, you can see by the depth that you can scout, the number of options that you've got. And the more scouts you've got, back to the keep asking for more coaching staff, scouts. The more you've got, the better your team will be, the better your scouting operation will be. So if we come back to scouting now, we click the scouting button, and in here you will get all the new scouting recommendations, and these will come from a variety of your scouts. Again, if you click the recommended button, that will list them in priority. So all the A pluses are at the top. If you come up to players up on the top bar and click on scouted players, in here you get a much more detailed view. So let's say that you've just joined the club, you've got a half decent team, and you're thinking, right, okay, there's no one specific position that I'm looking for, but I've sent my scouts out to do fairly wide ranging and not looking for anything particularly specific. So in here, you can now say, right, okay, if we're going to new search, click new search, and we can now start being specific on the scout recommendations. So let's say, for instance, we said, okay, central midfielder got injured, he's out for like 8 weeks. We need a backup. So in here we can be specific. On this football pitch, you can click centre midfield. You can see that it lights up to show you that it's done. Transfer status any. So we can go not listed, listed any. Loan status, contract status. Again, we're back to the expiring in 3 months, etc. We can do age range, role. So we can say, right, we want a Mazzala for that central midfield position, and we can go into attributes and pick. So if we want him to be quick and quick off the mark, we could select pace, acceleration. As soon as you do that, then you get is at least. Again, all these scores are out of 20, so you might say, right, I want somebody who is top notch, 20. So I want a Mazzala who's really quick and has got 20 for both of those categories. Click OK and click OK again. Now, as you can see, that has now taken everybody out. So all of those scouting reports that we've got, none of them have come through with that specific player that we were looking for. Again, now if you said, right, but I really do want that player, you could then go back into your scouting again and set a scout or multiple scouts looking for that specific player, and they will come back with reports. Like I say, I've just taken over here at Newcastle, so most of this is quite general. So if we go back to edit search again, so let's go back in here again, and we click the Mazzala, and we go right down to the bottom. We're going to put any. Let's just say that we're looking for any player on the pitch, but has still got really good pace and acceleration. We want quick players. So at the moment we're on 20s. Let's start reducing those a little bit. And as you're doing this, results will start to appear. Right, so we've got down to 15s there. Okay, so the first one that comes up is Fred. He's at Manchester United, tells you his age, ability. They're giving him a B+. Knowledge is extensive. Harrison Reed at Fulham. Niall John at Tottenham. So those are the players that the scouts have been out, and for the criteria that we've just set, those are the players that they've identified. If we take the central midfielder out and we take these out, so now this is wide ranging. Now this is not being specific in any area at all. And these are, you can see now there's a lot of players here. We can scroll right down. There's lots of players here, but this is for all positions. If you had a really good team and you said, right, we just want to make an addition to it that is maybe any position on the pitch, and let's just see what is available. So again, if we click the recommended button, this will now list the players. So Declan Rice has come up as the top player. He's a 4.5 star with the potential to be 4.5, 5, 67 to 80 million. He's on 60 grand a week, A+, extensive. And then Youri Tielemans at Leicester. Now I signed Youri Tielemans using this exact screen. I signed Youri Tielemans for Newcastle into my Newcastle career, and I think he cost me about 39 million. But you can see from that he's 25. He's got a 4-star rating. Knowledge was extensive. Recommendation level A+. And I just I had a reasonably good Newcastle team, And I wasn't really looking for any position specifically, but as to how can I make this team even better. So I came in here, deselected all of the attributes, and just, right, this is the basic scouting screen. Who is really good on here? And, you know, Declan Rice, okay, I haven't got 80 million, probably going to cost me 90, 100 million in reality. I haven't got that kind of money, so we'll disregard that one. But Youri Tielemans would be a really good addition in midfield. So we'll have a look at him. And I did. I signed him. This screen will repopulate as you know, your scouts go out and do their jobs. It might take them a week, 2, 3, 4 weeks to. But in the meantime, you're pressing continue. You're doing other things. You're setting your coaching up. You're hiring new staff. You're setting up your tactic. So all of that's been done in the background now. But you have the comfort of knowing that you've set all of that up yourself. You know, you're not letting the AI do it for you. You've actually set it up yourself. And it's quite nice, you know, when your Brazilian scout, all of a sudden you'll come into here and the next thing you know, it's, oh, hold on a minute. There's a 19-year-old Brazilian here who is he's valued at like 10 million. And he's coming in as a 3.5 star with the potential to be 5 for 10 million. I mean, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? You just sign him because you can guarantee that as soon as he comes into your team, he'll probably be worth between 30 and 40 million. And the more you play him, his value will go up. So it's an and/or situation. You've got a player there who is, you know, an amazing player going forward, but you've also got some value in that player. You've only paid 10 million for him. He might end up being worth 120 million, 350. You just don't know, do you really? With the wonderkids, their costs can skyrocket. So again, setting the scouting up is really important and quite fun and very self-satisfying, because when all these reports start coming in, like I've just shown you, you can see exactly who the scouts have been out to see. It maybe brings, I mean, obviously, Youri Tielemans, we know Youri Tielemans, he plays for Leicester. Declan Rice, he plays for England, plays for West Ham. We know these players, you know, that they're kind of no-brainers, aren't they, really? But go back to what I was saying before, I've only just taken over Newcastle here. So all of these players, I mean, if we just scroll down a little bit, you know, there's players on here like Thomas Souček, Wilfried Zaha. They're all players that we know. But the more your scouts go out and do their job properly, then the more players that will appear in here that you haven't heard of before, but actually will become world stars. So there is a great benefit to having your scouts out there doing a really good job. Because, you know, most saves in Football Manager are not just a one season, you play it, done, finished. They're 3, 4, 5, 6 season, 10 season, you know, and the player that you brought in at the end of season 1, by the end of season 10, becomes, you know, a 27, 28-year-old world star that you found. You found them, you know. Well, your scouts did, but you set the system up. So it's well worth doing, and I would say, you know, always have a go at this if you've got the time to do it. Anyway, I hope that's been informative. By no means have I covered absolutely everything in scouting. There are other buttons that you can click. There are that you can go into it a lot more depth than I've gone into it. Like I keep reiterating, watch other people's tutorials on all aspects of the game, because everybody will have a different angle that they come in from. I'm trying to keep things fairly simple, fairly basic, which, you know, the more basics you get in the game, the more then you want to learn. You know, about how everything works. So you might have thought, oh, scouting, oh, it's too fiddly, but once you actually start doing it and you see these players coming through, the scouts that you've sent out, then you get a little bit more motivated, thinking, oh, hold on a minute, I've just signed the next Brazilian wonder kid, and I did all of that, I set all that up. So then that motivates you to learn a little bit more about scouting, or even learn a bit more about the medical staff or the coaching staff, or how best to recruit these people in the first place. So it's all a learning process. I mean, I will fully admit to you, I'm still learning the game as we speak. But all I can do is just impart a little bit of words of wisdom. You know, words of wisdom. that's all I can do really. And I hope you've enjoyed this today, and I hope you'll stay tuned for the next one. Not too sure what direction that's going in yet, but stay tuned.